If your Gaggia Classic is leaking out of the steam wand, I mean a lot like mine shown here, I know of 2 different causes and 3 different fixes. Here's a 60-second summary of causes and fixes. The leak may be caused by scale from hard water blocking something inside, or it may be a worn-out steam valve. If the leak is caused by a flake of scale, here are 2 links to videos illustrating 2 inexpensive fixes you can attempt. Go to this video to learn about aggressive descaling by toggling the steam button. It didn't work for me. The second inexpensive solution is time-consuming. Follow this link for step-by-step instructions to dismantle, clean, and add new O-rings to your Gaggia Classic. I dismantled, cleaned, and reassembled my Gaggia Classic, and there was no change in how much water came out of the steam wand when drawing a shot. To fix my machine, I had to replace the steam valve. The part cost $60 Canadian, and it takes 15 minutes to replace. See the last chapter of this video to see how that is done. The rest of this video documents the 2 ways to remove scale blockage and a quick chapter at the end showing how to replace the steam valve. Because toggling the steam button to loosen possible scale buildup didn't work, I searched online for a maintenance kit and found this from Coffee Section in the US. The parts arrived 10 days later from Germany. I purchased an O-ring for the bottom of the boiler, where I expected to see a large deposit of scale, an O-ring that sits between the steam assembly and the top of the boiler, 3 O-rings for 2 assemblies attached to the boiler, an O-ring for the steam wand, and a new gasket for the portafilter. I bought my Classic in 2018, so it's now 6 years old and averages 3 shots a day. The problems began a day after I descaled, which is why I suspected some loosened scale flakes were the cause of my problems. If scale flakes are the cause of the problem, then it's best to clean the boiler too. With the exception of the last chapter where I replaced the steam valve assembly for the ultimate fix, the rest of this video illustrates my efforts to remove the boiler and other assemblies for cleaning, replacing the O-rings, and putting it back together. It's not a step-by-step video, but I do provide some observations along the way. This is what you'll need if you're going to take apart your Gaggia Classic. You'll need a little tub and some descaler. You'll need a parts tray for the bolts that you take off. Most of those bolts will come off with a 4 or 5 millimeter Allen key. You'll also need a 12, 13, and 17 millimeter wrench. I used mostly the 12 and the 17, and I had some adjustable wrenches handy. You'll need a Phillips screwdriver for a couple of things, and I used a straight blade screwdriver for a little scraping and the pliers for the clamps. And I also needed some band-aids. The Gaggia Classic is very easy to access. There are 2 Phillips screws at the top, and you can pull off the top and the funnel assembly. The next thing I did was move the switch unit out. I actually had a little struggle with this because I was watching the step-by-step video. It looked a lot easier, but I managed to finally squeeze those 2 clamps, and the knob was a bit of a struggle too, but I eventually got that off. You can see that there's already numbers on the top of those connectors. That's a little red haze things. I highly recommend following the step-by-step video and numbering all those connectors. And here I'm going for one of the clamps. Everything really did come apart fairly easily. This one, I had to give it a good tug though. Pops off. There it is. Sometimes you have to pull the connector off and then number it. I'm heading for the steam wand. It wasn't on there very tight, and you really don't have to tighten the brass fittings. There's also a brass hose down at the bottom. And that number 12 easily removed it. It wasn't super tight. Matter of fact, when I put it back on, I did it hand tight and just gave it a little twist. You can see the water now coming out. If I did this again, I would probably put a towel down. This is just water that's in the boiler. flipped on the side, it's time to just loosen up and take out the screws that hold in the brew unit. Not a lot of water came out after I did this. I rushed to the sink thinking there'd be more, but it ended up just being on my counter and covered with the towels. So I'm removing the bottom plate of the boiler where and having a look in, and this is where I was expecting to see a lot of scale. And to be honest, there's not a lot of scale in there. This is what I was expecting to see. Perhaps I've been watching too many videos about scale. Anyways, it's fairly clean. Now I'm removing the two assemblies. And as you can see, that's the location of the little red O-rings. Two on the solenoid. One gave me a little bit of a problem. I was expecting to see if there was any flakes in there, and there wasn't a darn thing. I'm just pulling apart the solenoid there to see what it looked like and if there was something to clean. Of course, I didn't want to stick the black unit part in the descaler, but I did want to see if there was something else that could go in the descaler, because this is one of the areas I suspected that the scale flakes had built up. And so I put them in the soaker later, I'll show you, and cleaned them up, and I even blew on anything that I could see to see if I could dislodge anything, but never did I find any flakes or anything in this whole cleaning adventure. This unit, this is the steam valve assembly. Oh, by the way, don't even attempt this hot. Steam would blow out and everything. But this was a bit of a struggle to pull off, and this O-ring was a little disformed. In fact, of all the O-rings that I bought, that was the only one that was misformed. Just following the manufacturer's suggestion on how strong to make the descaler. This is the brew head, and the gasket in there was a struggle. You can see me here with a Robertson screwdriver. I have a link to a video that shows you what I'm doing here, because this came out in, you can see little pieces like that, little centimeter long pieces. Finally got it cleaned out, and I used the straight screwdriver to scrape that up a bit. Before soaking the boiler, I took off one of the thermostats. And this is the steam wand assembly. There's also a O-ring in there that showed no sign of wear. The only one that showed sign of wear was on the steam assembly and the portafilter gasket. This is another steam assembly. I'm just taking parts, saving. Oh, that O-ring actually didn't come with the kit, and it didn't show any signs of wear anyways. After 20 minutes of soaking, I rinsed and brushed off all the parts and laid them out. Put the new gasket in. I bought a rubber one. You can get silicone ones now. I thought I would try that. I've never replaced it before, but let me tell you, it was overdue. Water was streaming out all over the place. The filter on. Don't tighten this one too tightly. And there, the only misformed washer. Too bad it didn't help in this instance, because when I reassembled this, it still leaked. But I put the new washers on all the assemblies. This one I thought would show some signs of wear or buildup or corrosion, but it was pretty clean. The videos I've seen about dismantling has shown some really horrible scale buildup. I'm surprised that mine didn't. This is actually where you use the 12 and the 13. I didn't realize that when I was using the adjustable. This is for the solenoid assembly. Putting the O-ring back on, the one that didn't come in the kit. Then putting the thermostat back on the side of the boiler, reassembling the solenoid, reattaching the steam assembly. Don't get this too tight, and because you still have to wiggle it around to get the steam knob through the hole in the chassis. But this you can screw down tightly. But this is a mistake. I'm showing you my mistake. Don't tighten that too much. Then the two assemblies. You can see I already have a bandage. Actually, that's my second bandage. I have one on my index finger too. Or my thumb. There it is. Okay, lining it up. Fairly soon I'm going to learn that I actually can't get the steam knob onto that assembly. But before I learned that, I managed to get everything secured at the bottom, and then get the steam unit secured down there. And I did take a bunch of pictures with my phone along the way that I kept referring to, because the video I was watching step-by-step removal, the unit was a little different than mine. I think it was a 2015 unit. Very similar in parts. Certainly the connectors are in the same place, but some of the assemblies and parts are a little larger. So here I am. I was fixing in the connectors for everything. And I decided to skip along the way and just show you. I put it all together, put a shot of coffee in. I was thinking for sure this was going to work very well. And you can see the water just streaming like crazy out of the steam wand. But in the next section, I'll show you how easily it could have been fixed. Just a little review before we continue. I only needed 3 of the parts that I bought. Not that I spent a lot on O-rings, but the only malformed O-ring was the one on the Steve valve assembly. It's known as the number 7 T-brass faucet assembly on the parts list. So I needed the T-brass assembly, the O-ring that went with it, and then I also had a very bad gasket on my brew head and replaced that. And those were the only 3 parts that I really needed, which is probably why there's no maintenance kit. The other O-rings just show no signs of wear. In the last section, I replaced the steam valve assembly, which was the cause of the leaky steam wand. I really recommend you watch this video to learn how the steam valve assembly works. It appears I am the cause of my faulty steam valve assembly, because a couple years ago, when it started dripping a little bit, I turn the knob a little tighter. This is exactly what not to do. As you turn a brass assembly even tighter, it starts creating little dents in the needle valve, and it just gets worse and worse. So I'm to blame for this, and perhaps you are too. And now let's just replace that assembly. For removing and replacing the steam valve assembly and O-ring, you'll just need 3 tools: a Phillips screwdriver, a 17mm wrench, and a 5mm Allen key. Remove the top assembly and the steam knob. With the 17mm wrench, remove the steam wand. I just let it lay down there. And then with the Allen key, I loosen the bolts of the steam assembly a little bit at a time, a little bit on the top, a little bit on the bottom, and remove the steam assembly. And if you bought a new O-ring, this is a good time to take it off. This is the only other O-ring that I really needed. Get the new assembly and the new O-ring. Just plunk it over there with your nails. Put on the steam guard, it looks like. Not sure what the name of that part is. And then slowly tighten the bolts again. Leave it a little loose because you have to get the steam knob on and center it in the hole. So just tighten it just a little bit, try it again, tighten it a little bit more, and then lock it down after the steam knob is easy to use. Reattach the steam wand. Just get a little pressure. It's a brass connector, it doesn't need a lot. Reassemble the funnel and the top and take it away and try it out. In my case, the shot turned out perfect and there was no leak from the steam wand.